Hi, so this is going to be a yin class. So if you want to grab a couple of pillows, light some candles, set up the atmosphere in the room, maybe grab a couple of blankets and some warm clothes. And I will be talking throughout this, but if you would like to play some music in the background for the times that I'm quiet, if you enjoy that, please do. And we'll get started. So you're going to put some space in between your knees and maybe a little between your feet. Remember, in yin classes, we're not trying to engage very much. We're doing this, I'm doing this, mostly for a bit of relaxation and a little bit of stretch. I've been working out quite a bit lately because there's time to. So I'm going to give myself some little time, or a little bit of time not to. So you can place a pillow above or below your ankles. If your feet are sensitive, you might want to put some padding under there. You can put a blanket on the floor. You don't even need a mat. And I will place another one on top of my knees and fold forward like so. Eventually I'll probably take the blanket out or the pillow out and just fold forward without any support, but do whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. You can make a pillow with your hands. Because we're going to be here for a while, you might want to take extra time setting up so that everything feels pretty good. Whenever you're ready to, you can close the eyes. You can do this whole practice with an eye mask on if you wanted to, even, you know, whatever you like to make you feel more comfortable, but you can have your eyes open or closed the whole time. Go ahead and have a couple of breaths. Finding a place where you can be relatively still. For the duration of the pose, you might have some time or choose to shift around a little bit, and that's okay. But if you're moving because you're fidgeting, see what happens if you attempt to be still. You'll find that even like in a more vigorous practice or any type of exercise, that the sensation comes and goes in waves. And you might find that there are times when you don't feel very much at all, and that's okay. There might be times when you feel a whole lot, that's okay too. You're going to see if you can, again, kind of ride or surf the sensations that you feel, and notice what happens. So we have a couple more minutes in the pose. We're going to see if we can take the rest of the time here in quiet. We'll go deeper into our meditation later. You can focus on your breath if you'd like to, but you don't really have to do anything except for just a little bit. See what happens when you don't move very much. So when you're ready to, shift your weight up. We're going to sit on the edge of a blanket, rolled up, or maybe a pillow. If it's thick, you can leave it as it is. If it's quite thin, you might fold it. But sit on the edge of it. This too is optional. Like everything else, all of the alignment you're going to kind of play with so you can cater to what feels best for you. But we're feeling maybe a bit of a tug here in the inner thighs. Some people might feel it more in the back. I think we're going to hold this pose for a little bit longer. If you wanted to, you could stack some blocks up, rest your head on them. You might just rest your hands on the floor and hang out here. This is how I'm going to do it. But again, you're looking to feel, and it's okay if you don't feel anything, but a little bit of tug in the inner thighs, maybe a bit going on in the back, and you'll find that I will drop closer and closer to the floor the longer that I'm here. I'm not going to force it just yet. So after you've found your space, and take your time finding it, have a couple of breaths. And let's start noticing what happens. So as you get into your pose, again, take your time, please. I'll do a bit of talking and a bit of quiet. So if your experience is in any way similar to mine, you might notice that the intention of being still makes you want to do everything but. I personally want very much, as soon as I'm forced to be still, to almost run away. And I find that I clench my stomach. And I know these habits of mine, and I know they're quite common. It's not unique to me. So I tend to play with it a bit, just to see what happens. It takes me a good few poses sometimes to really find that deep quiet. So I'm going to invite you to do the same. Just fully invite whatever happens in or out, however you want to put it. So everyone has a whole lot going on right now, of course, more than usual. So if you find that anything bubbles up, whether it's a surprising high degree of intensity or even, and could be equally surprising, a low degree of intensity, just know that you're feeling what you're supposed to, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. It's just what's happening right now. And feel free to dip into your breath every once in a while. Some people like to practice very slow breathing here. I do that sometimes. But there's a lot to be learned from attempting not to really finagle too much with what's already going on. So maybe you just choose instead to observe the breath. You might notice the longer you're here, the more you physically almost succumb to the shape. You'll feel sensations of movement, kind of dropping sensations in your bones and your joints sometimes. You might feel a lot of resistance in the body too. All these are okay. Remember, a lot of, maybe even most of the things that are happening, the sort of protective mechanisms physically and mentally, it's all okay. Sometimes your body might be holding back a lot simply because it's a sensation or it's a pose or it's a time length that it's simply not used to, so it doesn't know how to tolerate it yet. So again, just check in, find the breath. So I'm coming up against this wall and this very deep desire to get out of the pose right now. And if you're feeling that too, you can follow it. I find that sometimes, although not always, when I hit that wall, I get a lot out of holding the pose for a little bit longer. But again, my experience doesn't have to be anything like yours. Just allow what comes up to come up. And if you feel it very important for you to come out of the pose, go ahead. If you want to play the edges a bit, go ahead. Go ahead. Again, walk the hands in. And however you need to support your body to come out of the pose, go for it. Feel free to sigh or grunt or grumble, whatever comes up is fine. So we're going to do swan pose, I believe it's called in yin, which is quite like a variation of pigeon pose with one shin forward and the other leg back. We'll be looking for sensation here in the outer hip of the front leg, maybe a bit in the back leg as well. So when you're ready to, we'll start with the right leg forward. So the right shin can come towards the top of the mat. Doesn't matter the angle of the leg, you can play with that later. And then you'll reach your other leg back some, depending on the shape of your hips, depending on the twist in your bones, the direction of your joints, and a zillion other things. You might find it appropriate to do a variation of the pose that doesn't look as maybe severe as this one. You can pad up under your hip and rest on it. I find, and this is especially true, I think, for many flexible people, that sometimes you get more out of yin when you stay very far away from the sort of deep degrees of your joints. So I look for maybe the teeniest bit of sensation in the pose, and then that's where I'll stay, and just let gravity do the rest and time do the rest. But again, we're looking for a bit of a stretch in the right outer hip. If you feel it not at all there, if you feel other places, that is okay. You can move around until you feel the stretch. But sometimes, again, and this is especially true for me, it doesn't have to be for you, I find that because I'm so accustomed to and enjoy so much, in a meditative sense, being really in the body, it's interesting and really useful for me to kind of back away from that every once in a while. So I sometimes look for less intensity here. Again, we're looking for stillness and time in the pose. And see what comes up. Of course, this probably goes without saying, if your knees hurt here, you can lie down on your back and place one of your shins on top of the opposite thigh and hold onto your leg instead. There's a whole bunch of different ways to go into the shape, go into the stretch. Again, you might find the longer you're here, the more you fall into a place of quiet. You might find that doesn't happen. You might find all sorts of things come up. So we're not attempting to negate or necessarily fight our conditioning. We're simply attempting to be quite curious about it. Notice in particular, especially in these crazy times, if you find that you start to feel really good and then you start to feel really bad about feeling really good, just check in with it. No one is going to be harmed by you feeling good, by you laughing sometimes during all this. And in fact, you are giving your body systems a little bit of a boost. So if you do find that you're feeling very calm or very good, and then you're feeling like this is not the time to feel that, just again, be curious about it. Find your breath. We'll shift into the other side. So again, we'll take some care coming out, especially if the intensity is high. If you want to lift your hips and go into downward dog, feel free, but I'm going full on, real easy movement, real languid kind of yin type practice. But if you feel better or safer every once in a while going into a more vigorous shape, go for it. And then again, we'll move into the other side. And stillness can be really difficult, even intimidating for a lot of people. If you find that you feel the opposite of safe when you force stillness, it's something that you can play with. I don't know if you should continue to, quote, put up with it, but maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. It's up to you. You could, though, move around a little bit if you feel a bit safer. Again, sometimes that happens to me, so I'll let myself move, or sometimes, again, I'll just play with the stillness and notice what comes up. But you can always rock forward and back some. You can keep your eyes open so that you feel quite alert. You can exhale out of the mouth, but really use this time to observe and to work with intelligent, manageable, self-soothing mechanisms in your own mind, in your own body. I find it useful to remember that if I'm thinking in ways that seem unwise or just dumb, really, that I was taught that somehow, and that the people or the society that taught that to me were also taught that. And since it's all a little bit unwell in some respects, imperfect for sure, I feel a little less blame and a little less shame. And I just remember that's my conditioning. If you'd like to go a little bit deeper, maybe by relaxing a little bit more, taking the pillow or any support out from underneath your hip, feel free. Go ahead and close your eyes if you want to. Rest a little more if you want to. And again, give yourself the complete sort of acceptance and permission to notice everything and anything that comes up without having to categorize it as good or bad. Just being with it. Go ahead and walk the hands in. Roll on to the left hip or the hip of the front leg and bring the back leg around. And then as you're ready to, we're going to go into a straddle. So I like to place pillows underneath the heels. You can sit down on something or sit up on something, I should say, propped up however you want to so you feel some comfort. Let your feet relax some. Again, kind of play the edges a bit. My spot is about here. I like to keep my upper back kind of lifted at first. I might round some more in the lower portions of my back as I dip down some, but because I tend to have a lot going on in my hamstrings quite often, I take it pretty easy on the legs and just move my upper body however feels good. Go ahead and find the breath. sensation here is in the back of legs, sometimes inner thighs, sometimes back. Again, it is okay if you don't feel a lot. It's okay if you feel a whole lot. If moving makes you feel safer, you can move. If being still maintains any interest, if you can stay curious about what happens, feel free. But you'll find that you spend much of the day going into and out of this sort of level of dissatisfaction and unease. And I'm learning more and more, you don't have to. And you will continue to be a hardworking, good person if you let yourself learn not to be thrown around by all the likes and dislikes in your own mind, by the process of constantly wanting more of one thing or less of one thing or another. But just like the sensations in your body come and go, move in waves, your wants, that dissatisfaction that also comes and goes, and you can ride the wave. So I'm going to stay in the pose for a little longer. Remember, on all sorts of levels, your entire body is communicating, trying to figure out what it needs to do, what needs to go where. And we're observing. You might even say that the main benefit or the main practice of these yin type of poses or practices is to just get comfortable with not interfering, or with not making meaning out of every single thing that pops into your head, out of every sensation that you feel or noise that you hear or look on your face or someone else's face. You don't have to make meaning out of it. And just go to your breath. Once again, just hit with a very strong urge to come out of the pose. That could mean I can come out of the pose. Could mean I should come out of the pose. But I'm going to ride it for a little bit and see what happens. Alright, so I'm going to come out. I invite you to do the same. Again, you can always come out before or after I say. But for the sake of my poor hamstrings, I'm going to engage my legs quite a bit before I come up. It feels better when I do it that way. Again, giving myself plenty of time to feel and to move. And again, a real languid kind of easy movement in the legs now could feel good. We're going to go into a twist on the back, and then we're going to have Shavasana in a back bend, and that will be that. So come onto your back. Place your feet on the floor, bend the knees, and when you're ready to, drop the knees over to the right. You can play around so that you feel a lot going on. I like to get my shoulders involved in this pose sometimes. So I'll take my left hand behind my back, reach my right arm down the neck. Up to you. You can have your arms out to a T, turn your face whatever direction you like. But go ahead and find the breath again. You can feel this in your hips, in your back. Nowhere at all, it's all good. Again, full permission to feel everything that comes up, to think the thoughts without identifying with them. And if you find that you're caught in a web of reactivity or in a thought loop that maybe you don't find agrees with your ideals so much, pay even closer attention to what you feel, what you physically feel in the body. Pay attention to the urges to stop it or escape from it. Note that if you do feel as if something is wrong with what you're thinking or what you're feeling, chances are it's something that you were taught. And even if you were taught it by someone or some system with good intentions, doesn't mean it was correct. So go back in. And then we'll switch sides, nice and easy. Just take your legs to the other side. Switch your arms if you did something with them. Find the breath. Again, remembering that reactivity and occasional feelings of dissatisfaction are in many ways so extraordinarily good for us. We're not trying to pick out what's wrong with us and then throw it away. We're trying to fully observe our patterns and then you will likely find the more you observe them, the more obvious it is that they are just that. Patterns. And that pretty incredible things happen when we play around with it, when we become curious about not following the urge every once in a while. About maybe not reacting, especially to the things that you find really kind of grind your gears. and just see what happens. You can move your arms, your legs, going back to center. Notice how your waist and back feel. And we'll stack some pillows behind us. Feel free to make a whole throne with yourself, or for yourself, whatever feels good. We're going to rest for a couple of minutes on the pillows. So I'm going to talk you into the rest and then end the video. You can stay there for as long as you want. You can set a timer if you'd like, but it's going to be a couple of minutes on video, and then the rest will be for you to do. So thank you in advance for practicing yoga, really, or whatever it is you want to call this, but for really tuning in. Go ahead and rest yourself on your sort of throne of pillows, so your pile, in a way that feels really comfortable. I like a pretty easy back bend these days, but you do, again, whatever you enjoy. Even if it's something a little different, sometimes there's a lot of comfort in a challenge, but we're looking mostly for ease. Do whatever you'd like to do with the arms. So this kind of more vulnerable shape might be another opportunity for lots to come up. But we're going to stay in it under the assumption that we're kind of spotlighting or highlighting our practice or exercise still. So what we're doing, this sort of movie that's going on, that is what we're getting better at. That's what we're exercising. Again, our thoughts, the words, they can go a long way. They're not unimportant anyway. I don't mean to say that. But delve deeply into what you feel, at least every once in a while, and give yourself full permission to feel it.